Hi everyone, I'm Robin from Western Massachusetts, and this is the Morgellons Call of the Week. It is Sunday, March 21st, 2021. So I am the co-host of this Morgellons Call, and it is because I struggled for pretty close to 4 years with Morgellons, springtails, mites, and other vectors that brought Morgellons into my home, and I was ready to burn my house down. I had given up. I was hopeless, discouraged, depressed, filled with despair. I asked my pastors, could you please mute yourself till it's time for you to talk, whoever is speaking, because we can all hear you. So I asked my pastors for help, and they prayed for me, and they prayed for creative solutions. And the next day I found Richard's book. And then that Sunday I found this call. And I started on the diet, which didn't kick in right away because I made a ton of mistakes. Very easy to make mistakes on the diet. But when the diet kicked in, all of a sudden I could deal with the environment. I started getting better. I got my life back. I forgot what it was like. And then Christmas came, and I opened my Pandora's box of ornaments. My whole house got reinfested. And then I didn't notice because I forgot what it was like. I was like, oh, these little specks aren't anything. Oh, these fibers aren't anything. And then I got COVID and was in bed for like 90 days. So my house got pretty bad. I got pretty bad. The good news is, as I got well, I'm still here. And I know how to deal with this, and I'm almost through it now. My house is better. I'm better. Not totally clear, but so close. So close. And I have Richard to thank, his book, the diet, and this call. So that's why I'm here. I want to give back. And I also want to introduce Richard to you guys. So Richard Kuhns, you know, as I'm sure many of you know, the medical profession isn't really trained in teeny tiny organisms. And it's not really the wellness profession, it's the pharmaceutical profession, right? So Richard has done tons and tons of research. He over 2 years developed this diet that starves, well, I think it starves them in your body. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but that was my experience. And he keeps learning. He never stops. I love that. And as we find things, we contact Richard, and he researches them more. So, you know, he's in the 10th edition of his book came out a couple of months ago, and he's already in the middle of the 11th edition of his book. It's just, and he's here. He's here to answer questions. He's available through email. He brings people like our guest Jeremy on the call today. So, you know, I'm thrilled to introduce to you Richard Kuhns, the author of How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons and Other Skin Parasites.
Thank you, Robin. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, the last couple editions of the book, it was changed to How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons, Chronic Lyme, and Other Skin Parasites. It's a pleasure to be here every Sunday to provide encouragement. I know it's not an easy task. It took me years to get my life back. I know I went through the depression, the anger, the frustration, the desire to kill myself. I went through the whole thing. And I'm so grateful that I finally figured things out and learned over the course of years. You know, back in the 90s when I was first contracted these organisms, I had no idea what they were. I was thinking in terms of mites. Got to be some kind of mite. I was researching scaldy face mites, and from Australian experts and all kinds of things, focused on the idea it must be some kind of mite. The doctors knew nothing, and I was getting nowhere no matter what I tried. And then I stumbled upon someone who said, well, you might look into diets. Maybe there's some relationship between diet and what you're experiencing. Well, I thought that was the craziest, stupidest, but I tried everything else. What the hell did I have to lose but to try it? Now, having run a stress management facility where we did biofeedback and hypnosis and stress management and nutritional awareness, I knew there were things such as food sensitivities. And I knew how to find a food sensitivity was to test foods and keep a diary. So I did that, and I started eating nothing but eggs, just eggs. And I was amazed that within hours, my symptoms kind of went away. And I set up a scale, 0 to 6. 6 was as bad as they could possibly be, like waking up at 3 a.m. with them in your crotch and in your hair and your head and driving me to the tub with scalding water. So that was 6. 0 was, oh, wow, that's perfect. But I was happy with 1/2 to 1. That was my range of happiness. And over the course of 2 years, I tried different foods, and I recorded them, which ones seemed to aggravate them, activate them, and which ones seemed to make them quiet. Now, I don't know what impact they really have or why it works, but it's experiential only, and there have been many people who have claimed it to be a cure. It is not a cure. I tried stage 1 of the diet for 90 full days, had no symptoms whatsoever, thinking, well, maybe I cured it. Well, I went off that diet, and believe it or not, within 7 days, all hell broke loose. So it is not a cure. And before we do get into this, and because we may be discussing some things that may seem like recommendations, even the diet is a recommendation, it's important for me to let you know that the FDA requires me to inform everyone on this call that none of us here today are medical doctors. Anything that you may construe as a recommendation, you are to thoroughly discuss it through with your doctor to make sure it does not interfere with any health problems you're presently experiencing. The AMA and FDA also like me to tell you and require me to tell you that none of us are here to cure, treat, diagnose, or mitigate any disease, even skin diseases, okay? We're not here to do that. But we're allowed to do, everybody press *6 on your phone, *6 until you want to speak. But what we're allowed to do is educate you, and what I've been doing for years is educating people how to get them out of their skin, out of the environment, out of their bodies, and the nutritional supplements to build health and functioning. Now, today's guest came about through a interchange on Facebook. I noticed a post that Jeremy posted that said, well, there should be more people doing things on YouTube. And I wrote to inform him what our channel was and that we do our Sunday events. And it evolved from there. He wrote me back to say something to the point that everything, well, he's referring to a program we did 2 weeks ago called What is Morgellons, where we looked at, okay, what is it? Is it fungal? Is it Lyme disease? What is it? Okay. He looked at that and informed me that basically most of what we said was wrong and that we were sensationalizing his disease. So rather than get upset and defensive about that, I asked him, okay, so give me some input. Where do you think I'm wrong? So from what I gather, and Jeremy can let us know otherwise, he started out basically as all of us do, kind of like being slapped upside the face with these organisms and going to doctor after doctor and trying to figure out what was going. And each of us come up with our own theories. I mean, there was a theory I published a few weeks ago where this lady says, oh, these things, Morgellons or parasites, they eat concrete. And she actually has a website up about it. So everybody kind of comes to their own conclusions about what their Morgellons is. And so we all started out with that. I went the route with self-experimentation. I did go through 2 people with the Morgellons Foundation Dr. Bransfield, who is very close to me. I was his patient for a while and underwent 6 months of a rotation of antibiotics, of Biaxin, Bactrim, and Zithromax, along with antifungals. I spoke with the late Dr. Harvey at length, and part of that interview is part of our appendix. And Dr. Harvey at that time, this is back in that like 2006, and we all learn. That's why we're in the 10th edition of my book, and the 11th edition we're working on is because we learn. We learn every day. Back then, Dr. Harvey was expressing opinions that maybe these are things that are floating in the upper stratosphere from perhaps even Africa and somehow come here and we get infected by them. That was simply something that he put forth, and I remember it quite vividly as we had discussed it. So we all come up with our theories about what it is and where it comes from and so forth. I have gone the route of the approach with antibiotics and then veered off with a diet, which I had actually known about before the antibiotics. The interesting is that with the antibiotics that I was prescribed with Dr. Bransfield, I didn't need a diet. I didn't need it. The environment wasn't an issue. It was like cloud 9. Wow. But boy, when I came off of them, within 6 months, Lyme disease almost destroyed my life. And that was part of the reason why I was on the antibiotics, because I had the diagnosis of Lyme disease before I started with actually no symptoms, but I had the diagnosis. So I've gone one route and come up with protocols and research that works for many of us. And Jeremy is going a route which is commendable. He's been able to interview people from the Morgellons Foundation, the researchers, Dr. Medivahan, I think the pronunciation is correct. He can correct me. He's interviewed other people that most of us don't have. Dr. Saverly, who wrote the book, Morgellons, The Legitimization of a Disease, which is a fantastic book written for the medical profession so that we can get doctors to stop diagnosing us as delusional and look beyond. Well, I can't imagine how these doctors look at these lesions in the first place and diagnose it as delusional in the middle of your back where you can't reach or scratch. You know, God forbid. I don't understand that. But that book is very important. And so, Jeremy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. I can hear you. So tell us, how long have you had Morgellons? Is there anything that I said that's not correct? The assessment, the direction you went versus the direction I went, you think that's a pretty good assessment?
Richard, I appreciate you having me on the show here. I appreciate you and Robin being here to host the show, and the history is great. It's most people's experience is exactly what you described that you went through. And so I appreciate being able to hear everybody's perspective. And you said you were wondering about a pronunciation?
Yes.
Who was that?
Medivahan? Middleveen?
Middleveen.
Yes.
You got it.
Middleveen. Okay. Yeah.
Mary and Middleveen is great people, definitely.
Now, how long have you been dealing with Morgellons, or when did it come about in your life?
Very early in childhood, I developed a severe eczema with the blue fibers around the parameters of these hyperpigmented ulcerations.
So I'm guessing that's, what, 20 years ago, perhaps?
You're sweet.
Long before chemtrails, right?
Long before chemtrails, that's true. I actually didn't... my ulcerations got pretty severe around 2012, 2013. And that's when, because I had been seeing doctors for several years before that, just like everybody else. And I think what people, when they go into the emergency room, I think doctors are a little confused about whether it's an autoimmune disorder or an infectious process. And I think most people get 1 week of antibiotics and 1 week of steroids, the pyramid, the prednisone pyramid. and I think that's typically what I got. In 2012, though, that's when I went to the emergency room with the sores. They had become unbearable, the chronic fatigue. And that was the first time that they had brought a dermatologist in to sit down and tell me that I was, of course, doing this scarring myself. I was hurting myself for attention. You got it. Yes, sir. Thank you. And I just got up and walked out of the emergency room. You know, I just avoided a confrontation, and I didn't want to accept that answer, so that was the end of that visit for me. It wasn't until 2014 when I got back on Facebook, after taking a break, that I engaged with the Morgellons community, and I got my first microscope, and that's when I first stuck that microscope inside a sore and saw the filaments, the fibers as they're described. And so that was my first time I'd heard anything about Morgellons, was 2 years after the unexplained dermopathy study.
So what kind of treatments have you had?
I flew out of state to see a Lyme-literate doctor in Washington, D.C., and she started me on a combination antibiotic therapy with a herbal supplement regime based on my case history, and she's also studies genetics, so applied my particular genetic profile to the treatment protocol that she recommended for me.
Okay. Have you ever gone into remission or gotten free of the symptom, the itching and the bite? I presume you also had the itching and the biting sensation, as most people report?
Sure, sure. It was a burning, a stinging sensation, the itching. You know, to be honest with you, right now I'm probably more in remission than ever before. I still get maybe half a dozen lesions, but they're not as particularly severe as they have been in other times past. And that's something I want to point out. It was always the lesions that bothered me, not the fibers. I didn't even know the fibers were there until I stuck a microscope inside of them.
I think that's probably true for most people. The filaments or fibers, they're not really that big a problem, but the lesions and the itching and the biting, and then of course the filament, they look into it and they find out, oh yeah, I do have filaments, and that must be Morgellons disease. After they do a lot of researching on the internet to find out why they're having the itching and the biting and the lesions. And right, but not everybody does have lesions. It's rare, but not everybody does have any lesions. I mean, I've even had people that didn't even have any itching and biting or lesions. They just had these weird filaments coming out of their bodies. May I ask you the treatment that you're undergoing? You're undergoing a treatment right now, like an antibiotic series or something of that nature?
That's right. I'm on a combination antibiotic therapy. My doctor did recommend cannabidiol oil, and research, especially down here in South Carolina, has demonstrated that CBD oil is beneficial in resulting in antimicrobial peptides in the gut, and it assists antibiotics in being more efficient.
Can you share with us approximate cost of this kind of treatment?
Cannabidiol oil?
The whole kit and caboodle, the antibiotics, the consultation fees, and so forth.
It's way too much expensive than any one person should ever have to bear. I think that even though 85% of my regime is herbal supplements, I think that insurance companies should be covering those as well. You know, when you get a diagnosis of Lyme disease, and that's reported back to the CDC, it's after a thorough clinical evaluation based on set criteria. The doctors aren't just passing out the Lyme diagnosis for no reason. You have to meet a certain amount of checkpoints on that criteria list to be able to get the diagnosis and then have that reported back to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Right. Okay. Have you had opportunity to speak with or coach many people who are dealing with Morgellons disease over the years?
I've spoken with a lot of people over the years who have come to me for advice about Morgellons disease. And what I always recommend is to see the functional medicine doctor, Lyme literate medical doctors, somebody who understands their condition and who is familiar with Morgellons. The fact is that the people who produce the Lyme literate medical education are intimately involved with the scientific investigation of Morgellons disease. And so they're the doctors that are certified under that ILADS program, the International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society educational program. The doctors that are trained under that would automatically be more familiar with MD, Morgellons disease, and less likely to want to refer out to a psychiatrist, which would be inappropriate, or a dermatologist who may likely just bounce back to a psychiatrist.
Okay, thank you. And so then you would see that people who came to my route in my direction probably shouldn't be doing that. They should be going to the LLMD rather than going the route that I have.
Well, I did want to ask a couple of questions that may help us on this investigation in this discussion. And the first thing is, would you agree that there is no such thing as non-filamentous Morgellons?
All Morgellons, I agree with Dr. Satterley, all Morgellons is associated, and that's characteristic of filaments. She differentiates fibers from filaments in the sense that she says, well, doctors say, well, it's fibers from your clothing. Well, these are actual filaments that are emanate from your skin, deeper levels of the skin. She also indicates in some cases you need like a 60 power scope to actually see them. They can be so fine. So yes, I agree that to be Morgellons, there has to be filaments associated with it.
Have you heard anybody try to claim that they have non-filamentous Morgellons? Well,
there are people that come to me and don't know what they have. They don't claim, they want to know what they have. I haven't had anybody say, I mean, I don't even have people that say, I have Morgellons. We discuss it and determine that they have filaments or fibers. I have a rather detailed questionnaire that everybody answers. Now, question, how do you feel about Dr. Satterley in her book, let's see which page it is. She talks about columbella on page 203. She has about maybe 4 pages of columbella, about columbella, or columbola, springtails, snow fleas, whatever you want to call them. And it's in the section where, okay, what Morgellons is not. It's in the section where, well, Morgellons is not fungal, which we agree. Morgellons is not columbella or caused by columbella, which we agree. But she doesn't get into the impact that columbella by an organism itself can cause many of the same symptoms, such as the itching and the relentless biting that Morgellons cause, without the filaments.
That's where I would answer your question that, no, I mean, if people are coming to you for treatment for columbella, then...
Well, first, let me correct you. I do not do treatment.
Right.
Education.
Education, gotcha.
Right.
So if people are coming to you for information about columbella, no, I don't feel like that's inappropriate at all. They may be confused about what Morgellons is and maybe mistakenly believe that they have it and that it's associated.
They really don't know what they have. Now, my experience, I guess my personal experience, even though I thought it was the worst possible thing that could ever happen to me in my entire life and that I would never, ever see the light of day and that I would die from it, I learned from it. And I didn't start with Morgellons. I started with what I thought was mites. And around 2006, I learned about these organisms called columbella. And they jump from the floor. Yep, they're like fleas, but you can't see them. They jump from the floor. They can jump 8 inches, 10 inches high. They focus on the ankles and the lower. They are around wet places. It could be leaky pipes. It could be damp places in the basement. It could be in the plants that you have sitting next to you in the ground. There are 6,000 species of them, over 6,000 species. And there's a reference in the book that I give that where they found that about 19 species, 19 out of 6,000, have an affinity for human flesh. But then if you talk to all the entomologists and all the experts, they say Columbella cannot exist on human skin. Yeah, I mean, you wash it off and that's it. If they're on you, you wash them off and that's it. They cite the reason because they don't have mouth parts. The Columbella has no mouth parts. Well, that was perplexing for a long time. How can they be on our skin, and how can they find 19 species? How can the Swedish people in Sweden in 1959 find them as a pest that does infect skin? And how did the National Pedulosal Society in 2002 find that 20 out of 22 people, or something like those numbers, who were diagnosed as delusions of parasites, and that was before the word Morgellons was even coined? How can they be there if they don't have mouth parts? And then I happened upon another project or explanation is that Columbella do have mouth parts, but they are capable of receding them. They're not, so when you look at them under a microscope, they're not feeding. The mouth parts have been receded.
It's a little crazy.
So,
other times on target.
My life started out with dealing with Columbella and Strongyloides cervicalis, and I dealt with that. And then later on, I found out there is a thing such as Morgellons, and I was infected with Morgellons later on, about 2013 or 2014. So I got all of them, but fortunately not all at the same time. And many of the people, some of the symptoms with Columbella, the symptomatology is, as I said earlier, you feel it around your ankles or lower legs. They jump up. In the beginning, I didn't have that because I had them all over my body. My exposure came from pulling a vine out of a tree, and there's a cloud of dust that descended upon me, after which, within a few days, I noticed many shiny things. If you put your hand in the sunlight, you could see a lot of shiny things. I surmised that they were eggs of mice, perhaps, about to be hatched. I don't know. I went the microscope route too. They were perfectly spherical. Couldn't really see anything there to identify anything. And so when people are looking at Columbella, they have also a crustation around the eyelids and eyebrows. That's not reported with Morgellons. Oftentimes there are lesions on the back of the scalp and the shoulders, which sometimes is, and sometimes that one's kind of could go either way. I don't know. I have an answer to that. But have you heard of anyone with Morgellons with a crustation of the eyelids and eyebrows?
Yes, definitely. That is one of the symptoms that's associated. Anything that's dealing with the skin is potentially affected, but the point I was getting at with the non-filamentous Morgellons is that is something that some people do believe. The thing about Morgellons is that it was on the news, and it was sensationalized when the news was reporting on it. They made it seem like it was a potential alien invasion. And because of that moment in time, a lot of people get hooked on that scene where Morgellons is this special, magical, mysterious kind of thing. But ultimately, when you get down to it, Morgellons is a simple skin condition. There's only one symptom of Morgellons, and that's the filaments in the skin. Now, people who are dealing with Morgellons may experience a lot of other symptoms that are unrelated but still they're dealing with them. They may be related to the same infectious process, but they're independent of the Morgellons condition, which is specifically the filaments growing embedded in the skin tissue.
Well, I agree 100% with that, and it is possible that a lot, like I say, people don't come to me and tell me what they have. They come to me and they tell me what they experience, and those with the issues around the ankles or legs and the crusty eyelids and no filaments, that's columbella. Has nothing to do with Morgellons. But what I find in my questionnaires is that, about 2013, 2014, 50% of the people that completed my questionnaire had those issues and no filaments. Today, I find that approximately 90% of the people who complete my questionnaire have the filaments and the crustacean and the thing around the ankles, which indicates to me they're dealing with both columbella and Morgellons simultaneously. And the other cofactors, yes, fungal, Lyme disease, they're all cofactors, but not Morgellons.
Well, crusty eyes, if I'm not mistaken, that can also be a result of anaphylaxis. I think poison ivy can also result in crusty eyes.
Well, the amazing thing is that when they're on the diet, it clears up.
Correct.
So that kind of tells me that it's columbella.
Sugar's killing everybody, isn't it?
Well, the diet. I don't know if you looked at the diet, and Dr. Saville in her book talks about it's important to eat right. Every doctor will tell you it's important to eat right, but the diet is a lot more strict, far stricter than that. I mean, healthy. Is olive oil healthy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, not for these skin parasites, not for Morgellons. They love it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. Morgellons isn't a skin parasite.
It is.
Well, it's a parasitic bacteria.
Well, what's happening? Go ahead, Robin. I'm sorry.
Thanks. I just wanted to give the definition of parasite, because people misunderstand. A parasite is an organism that lives in or on another organism of another species, which is the host, and it benefits by deriving nutrients at the other's expense. Or a parasite can be a person who habitually relies on or exploits others
like
and gives nothing in return, like a politician. But anything can be a I mean, so I personally think that Morgellons is a parasitic bacteria because it does live in and on a host, and it is to our detriment.
Well, I don't agree there. I think the filaments are the parasitic production, and they use up the nutrients. And right. From what I understand, they use up organic sulfur and iron from the body. It could be mistaken there, but they use up nutrients to produce these filaments, which makes it a parasite. And what it is exactly, I don't know what it actually is.
Right.
So the key thing there is the different species, because Morgellons is human in nature. That's right. The filaments are produced by the cells that make keratin and collagen. I've got a microscopic series of photos I can show you of the genesis of Morgellons filaments. And at the base of those filaments are a pavement of epithelial cells. That's the key thing that makes Morgellons fibers different from fibers in the environment. Fibers in the environment typically don't have a base pavement of epithelial cells.
Right. I agree there. Now, these filaments, you have noted that you do not believe they are capable of movement.
Correct. Yeah, they have no mechanisms for movement, no muscles, no. If they're wound up, they may unwind. They're so small that maybe micro breezes may hit them. Muscle contractions in the body, they're so small, they could be like earthquakes to those little things, but they don't have any mechanisms to move. Most of them are malformed hairs. That's why they're hollow.
So Dr. Middledine, you know, the microbiologist who's also a vet from Canada, she, under a molecular microscope, found inside the filaments, she found spirochetes, which move. And she saw the filaments move as the spirochetes moved. I personally, I mean, you know, all of this is, no one, you know, there's not, I don't think anyone can definitively say this is it. We all have opinions. But I personally think that the spirochetes, which are a bacteria, build the filaments around them as part of their, just like they create the biofilm to live in.
That's very close.
That, you know?
Very close.
So that's my opinion. I don't know.
No, that's great. I appreciate your perspective, and that's very close. The first thing, though, is Marianne Middledine is, she works for a veterinary services. She's not a veterinarian herself. She is a microbiologist, though.
Right.
She's also a professional. She's also had training in mycology. And so in the studies that she's produced, she's been able to determine that the fibers themselves were not comprised of any kind of fungal or insect elements.
Right.
Now, the spirochetes, what they're doing is they're going inside the keratinocytes and the fibroblasts. They're inhabiting those cells. And inside those cells, there are several studies which demonstrate spirochetal bacteria in particular result in collagen growth factor being expressed, and sorry, having a hard time pronouncing hyperkeratosis. Biofilm is very relevant in Morgellons pathogenesis. There is one study which demonstrates mixed bacterial biofilms. However, I took a course at the University of Copenhagen, the Costerton Biofilm Center. Dr. Costerton was a great man. If you go back and watch any of his interviews on YouTube, he gives a lot of information that's particularly relevant today about biofilm composition and evolution. But typically in biofilms, there are between 6 to 8 pathogens generally. So the spirochetes, what they're doing is they're going inside the cells that create the skin and the hair and the nails, and they're causing them to overproduce. And so a bundle of those cells infected with the spirochetes get together, and that results in a Morgellons filament. And I have pictures of that on the microscopic level. I can, using a anti-Borrelia stain that is not particular to Borrelia, but it can also reveal infection with treponemes, demonstrates these cells that are all infected with the spirochetes, and then resulting in the growth. Looks just like growth coming out of this base pavement of cells, resulting in the Morgellons filament.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of not everybody who has Lyme disease, in fact, Dr. Saverly says only about 6% of those who have Lyme disease have Morgellons disease. That's in her book. And then the research done by Strickler, indicates that only that 90% of the Morgellons people that they examined have Lyme disease. So the spirochetes are not involved in every Morgellons situation. Is that correct?
Well, no, because we just don't know if there's a predominance of treponemes in patients. It could be 100% of treponeme patients have Morgellons, and that 6% of Lyme patients are the 6% that are co-infected with treponemal infections.
For those who are not familiar with the term, would you explain what trypamine means?
The two most common ones that we run into, and we haven't had any evidence of one kind in Morgellons patients yet, are syphilis and Treponema denticola, which we have found several times in Morgellons disease patients demonstrated in the literature. Treponema denticola results in caries disease or dental cavities.
Okay, what is it? What type is it? A bacteria? Is it spirochete?
It is. Yeah, just like syphilis, just like Lyme disease. Also,
Okay.
Morgellons patients, as you know, another kind of Borrelia that goes into that 90% is the tick-borne relapsing fever. It may be the case that there are other kinds of relapsing fevers like louse-borne relapsing fever, which would be more predominant. I think a lot of kids end up getting...
Would that be a spirochete?
Yes.
Okay. I know there are some people who estimate there may be as many as 200 varieties of spirochetes.
Somebody told me that they found leptospirosis and leptospirotrichosis in one of their patients. I mean, not leptospirosis, leprosy spirochete.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But yet we can't say that Morgellons disease is a spirochete.
No, it's one of the conditions that results from spirochetal infection. In 2018, China produced a scientific review of the literature, and what it says is that doctors should be able to determine if a patient has Morgellons or has the mistaken belief of having Morgellons, and evidence of a spirochetal infection makes diagnosis of Morgellons more compelling.
I go many, many years ago, and I never really questioned it, and I never actually tested it. But are not the filaments of various colors, are they not fluorescents? Or is that a wives' tale?
No, some of the, actually I've got a picture on my website. The header image is actually of a fluorescent Morgellons fiber coming out of a bundle of fibers that was so dense and long that you could see it actually coming off my thigh with the naked eye. And but fluorescence is normal in people. Your cells can produce semen, for example, is fluorescent.
But are all the hairs or human hairs from human beings or animals fluorescent?
No, not typically. And also, the hair on your head or on your face isn't necessarily blue either. But some Morgellons filaments are stained blue with human melanin.
Mm-hmm. Colors range: red, yellow, white, blue, black. So the colors range from and the sizes and length of the filaments range from microscopic to inches in length. Okay, great. What do you feel is the importance of disinfecting one's environment?
Not important at all. In regards to Morgellons, the most important thing is addressing the underlying bacterial infection.
So you've never found it important to disinfect your surroundings?
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's only because I'm cleanly, but I don't believe it has any impact on the bacterial infection.
I think, in fact, Dr. Satterley, I didn't actually find the page, but the first time I read her book indicated that people who claim that disinfection is necessary are like charlatans or scam artists.
What was that questioning? Oh, people saying that I just don't think that there's any need to be overly clean or to be especially fixated on cleaning the environment. I've seen some people, wearing gloves a lot, and I mean, being hygienic is okay, but I think you can definitely go overboard. And I don't think that I really think somebody can live in a completely dilapidated environment but not have the underlying bacterial infection. If they're in a dilapidated environment, it's likely sooner or later that maybe the critters they're living with will have an insect jump off them and into bed with you, and give you the bacterial infection.
Well, I'm going to have people comment and share, because I don't want. I want others to share their experience in terms of what we're discussing here, and you claim it's not that important, and we're going to hear what many of them have found in getting their lives back. Vectors. Do you feel that there are, like for instance, Dr. Saverly discusses bed bugs, and she said bed bugs are not Morgellons, but she doesn't say whether or not they might be a vector. And even Dr. Harvey, many years ago, indicated that mosquitoes could possibly be a vector. So do you feel that mites, I mean, there are many books written about, there's The Year of the Mite, and there's other books that are written about mites. Do you think that these are vectors, bed bugs, carpet beetles, so forth, have anything to do with bringing Morgellons into our lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have the potential to deliver the spirochetal infection that can result in the Morgellons condition in those who are genetically prone to develop it. Unpublished research from Dr. Eva Shapey up there with you guys demonstrates 9 genes of a particular sequence significance among Morgellons patients that have been studied.
So let me ask. So you're basically saying to get Morgellons or to come down with it, you need a spirochetal injection from some kind of organism, whether it be the tick that's the Lyme tick that's generally blamed for it, or a mite, or a bed bug, or something of that nature.
No, I believe congenital transmission is probably how most people end up with it.
Anyone else would like to share your experiences, whether or not you need to disinfect your surroundings?
I would, Richard.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, this is Robin from Western Mass, and I want to say that, you know, when I had multiple infestations that hit my home. I had bed bugs, mites, springtails, and fleas, just bam, from people visiting. And then, as I got rid of those, I started getting lesions, and I kept finding things all around the house. And I had an entomologist I was working with, and I would bring him these samples, and all they were was fibers in my environment. And I really needed to it's not so much, it's not being clean, it's disinfecting and exterminating and killing the bacteria. I think that it's super important, and until I was able to do that, I didn't start getting better. So, you know, and they were all over. I would find them everywhere in my home, in my stuff, in my bedding. They were not the vectors, they were the Morgellons fibers. And I had gone to a dermatologist, you know, and I had these giant lesions, and he was like, yeah, you have Morgellons, and he wanted to put me in an antipsychotic, and at the time I didn't realize that, you know, I didn't know that that lowers your dopamine intake into the brain and makes you almost invisible to the organism. So I said, no way, I'm going to do that. And I prolonged my agony for another, 3 years. But I think disinfecting and exterminating the environment, it's not a matter of cleaning. You can clean to your heart's content and it won't do anything. You have to find out what, just like, you know, I had 3 kinds of resistant mites, and spraying with ammonia didn't touch them. So, yeah, it's really important for the vectors, and I think for the Morgellons itself as well.
Thank you,
That's
Robin.
my opinion.
We're going to have other people comment as well and share their experiences. But one thing that comes in here too is is Morgellons contagious?
Well, again, also I have given it to like 2 or 3 people.
Jeremy?
No, Morgellons is not.
I just don't know how it wouldn't be.
Well, it's because Morgellons is a condition that results from an infectious process. So
right.
Someone would have to get the infection first.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And second, they would have to be genetically predisposed to developing the condition.
But do you have proof of that? Do you have a study that says it has to go that route? Has anybody studied it? Has anybody done research?
Yes. Dr. Ivo Shapi has done preliminary research that suggests that there's a genetic predisposition.
Well, that may be true, but has anybody done research that it is not contagious? You see, Dr. Saverly says you can pick it up from mice and other vectors of that nature, and flying mold in basements and things like that. But you know, my personal experience is that I have given it to other people. My significant other, the time I was exposed from that cloud of dust, even though I took a shower, within 4 days, my significant other and myself, she was not exposed to that cloud, only I. And within 4 days, exactly the same minute, we were both in a hot tub as fast as we could go because we were itching ourselves crazy. She ended up giving it to her sister. I ended up giving it to other people. I have many people who have told me that they've given it to their children, they've given it to their grandchildren who picked it up. I've had people tell me they picked it up from sitting on a toilet at Universal Studios, and after they got up from that toilet, they started noticing it. I have people that said they were on an airplane ride, and after they got off that airplane, they started noticing the symptoms. I've had people that tell me typically hotels are probably the biggest place to catch it. Now, how can you catch it if you're talking about your system there? That's not happening. Somebody somebody was in that hotel room and left the contagion there. Somebody sat in that airplane seat. I don't tell these people they're delusional. They get enough of that from their doctors. So I do validate them.
We're talking about a dozen people you just mentioned right there.
There are hundreds.
Well, let's say there's 100 of those people. Are they all confirmed to have filaments embedded in their skin tissue?
They're confirmed to have skin parasites that are 90% of them are dealing with both Morgellons and Filamenta.
Wow.
But you see what I'm saying? You're talking about itching and burning sensations is not the same as having the filaments embedded in the skin tissue.
90% have both. 90%.
I'm just talking about of the 100 people that we're talking about, right?
I'm not talking about an exact number. I'm talking about people who share with me how they got the exposure. Where were you? How did you get it? So that's from somebody sat in that seat before. A friend of mine is a physician. He lives close by, and it's rather interesting. He contracted Morgellons. This is about 4 or 5 years ago. He didn't know that I had a book. He went online to find out that I had a book, and that my mother was his patient. So I worked with him. He did the diet. He did some radio frequency work with himself using a biofeedback instrument that does rifing type of frequencies. He got rid of it. I asked him if I could send him patients, and he will not talk. He will not see patients over the phone. He has to have them in his office. And he said, "No way! I will not expose my practice to people that might be who are or might be infected with the Morgellons." He refused.
I just want to let me interrupt for 1 second, because I don't think that you guys are really disagreeing. I think that it is contagious, but you have to have certain pre-existing conditions to be one of the people who can catch it. You know what I mean? Just like some people, I have walked through swarms of mosquitoes with people, and they don't get bit, and I get covered with mosquito bites.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Right?
Well, that's an important factor, and I make that. I mean, one lady read my book, and when the point that says that it's possibly contagious, she says, "You're crazy. It's not contagious. I have it, and I have 250 employees, and not one of them have it." And Dr. Saverly says it's not contagious because in all the years she's worked with Morgellons patients, she hasn't contracted it. But
I think it is.
That's not a study.
But it kind of goes with what Jeremy's saying.
But is it 1 out of 10 or is it 1 out of 100? That's the kind of research we need. And you do get it from sitting on an airplane seat that somebody else sat on before. And you do get Morgellons. You do
I gave it to my
those
dog.
filaments are infectious.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't think we're talking about the same thing. I think now we're diverging on what Morgellons, on my Morgellons.
Well,
no, all these people have the fibers. All
these people have the filaments.
Well, wait a minute.
Filaments.
But see, that's the thing. Right? I'm not exactly sure that we're being honest here. You're saying that these people have the filaments. I don't think most of these people even looked for the filaments. They were just concerned about the itching.
They do.
But are they
In
looking
time,
for
I
filaments
think
in
in
the
time.
environment, or are they looking for filaments in the skin?
Jeremy, my question.
Morgellons fibers are not in the environment.
But they are.
No, they aren't. They originate inside the skin.
No, wait a minute. The questionnaire that I use is very precise. Do you find filaments or fibers growing from your skin that are strange or whatever? That's the question. And they say, yes, we have filaments and fibers that grow from our skin.
But they can end up in the
90%.
environment. It doesn't mean they start in the environment. They fall off of your skin.
And they
Yeah,
are
it's all over
infectious.
the- Yeah.
And
No,
they
most of the thing is you cannot differentiate between a filament that began in the environment or began in your skin. Because you're always going to have more environmental fibers than environments that came from your skin.
And those environmental factors come from your skin. And if some,
you have to do a chemical analysis to determine the fiber's composition.
Right, and some of these people have.
Yeah, but
Now,
the thing is those Morgellons fibers are comprised of keratin and collagen. Somebody may have mistakenly picked up a fiber from the environment, took it to have it chemically analyzed, and then it said, "Oh, this is a textile fiber," and then they came back and said,
all
"Oh,
right,
this
let's turn the phones over to the people in the call. If anybody has been infected from another person or has infected another person with their Morgellons filaments or fibers, would you please weigh in?
I have something to say.
Yes, go ahead. Okay.
This is Ethel. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm going to go back a bit before you guys got into your little heated discussion, and you were talking about being genetically predisposed. This is my opinion. I think perhaps rather than it might be a genetic predisposition, but I think it has to do a lot with the immune system. And if you've had some problems like leaky gut and those kinds of things, and your immune is compromised, you are probably more prone and more ready to host something like this.
Ethel, have you gotten it from somebody else, or have you given it to someone else?
I don't think this sprang from my body. I spent one night and I came out, and I've been sick for 3.5 years. And it was, it was not like just all of a sudden I was in my house and it happened to me. When I went to an Airbnb where the vector was, that's when I became infected. And I do think it's contagious because I have been around people and I feel that I'm really affecting them with whatever's emanating from me. It's the might or whatever, but I do think that you have to have, like, your immune system has to be somewhere on the point of being really compromised in order for you to host this stuff.
Well, that's another whole discussion, because we talk about the impact of 5G and true, Morgellons has been around a lot more than 5G, but I've had people that have actually had all the symptoms and they cleared up when they got rid of electrical pollution in their neighborhood by installations being it's electrical pollution. The symptoms have been eradicated simply by that. Glyphosate interferes with the biome in your gut and makes you predisposed to disease. Glyphosate is also a patented antibiotic. It's a patented descaler, so it interferes with minerals being used in your body. There's GMOs. They are actually pesticides that are in the foods that you eat that contribute to the toxicity. Lyme disease loves toxicity. There are studies that say that Lyme disease loves to live in a cesspool of toxic nature. So these are all cofactors that make it so much easier for Lyme Morgellons to be a factor in one's life. And not everybody is susceptible to Morgellons. Many husbands and wives, the wife has it, the husband doesn't. The one person is the only one in the family that has it, then everybody calls her nuts and crazy. There are other cases where everybody in the family has it, and they give it to their grandchildren when they come over, and they feel guilty for the rest of their lives because they don't really have contact or control over the diet of the grandchildren or how they're dealt with. So our experience is it's contagious.
Richard, I wanted to say about the genetic predisposition, you know, the dog study that showed Morgellons in dogs showed that pit bulls...
I gave it to my dog. I gave it to my dog.
Showed that pit bulls were particularly prone to developing the Morgellons condition.
Many animals are, not all.
Did you say pit bulls?
That's right. The pit bull species is in the canine...
That's what I have is a pit bull, and I gave it to him.
Well, I wouldn't assume that you gave it to him. It may be that you were both exposed to ticks. You're down in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Texas, but I was exposed by my hands. I fell on some thorns, like bull nettle or something, you know.
That could have compromised your immune system.
There's a condition also where rose bushes, if you get stuck in thorns and rose bushes, have some kind of
rose bushes
that
but you could have been carrying the spirochetal infection and that rose being exposed to the rose punctures could have lowered your immune system enough for the opportunistic spirochetal infection to make the lesions present.
Well, they were embedded in my hands. The bull nettle was in both of my hands, and it just never went away. It was like there for months and months, and I was like, "What is going on?" And then everything went from there. But that's how I got it.
Well, thank you. Anyone else like to share how you find the importance of disinfecting, or what you find as when you're dealing with Morgellons?
Hey, Richard, on the glyphosate, Dr. Stephanie Seneff has some good research that it acts analogous to glycine in the human body.
And what does that mean?
Well, lysine is that L-lysine, the limiting molecule for glutathione? No, that's L-cysteine.
Right.
That's L-cysteine. I'm sorry. Lysine is a sugar, right?
Yeah, it's what the body uses to convert. Actually, I'm not an expert on biology at all. I just was in a call where she was discussing that research that she had accomplished.
L-lysine is a natural sugar that's used by the mucosa in the gut for people with leaky gut syndrome that we use, because leaky gut syndrome is often an issue here, along with candida. I mean, these are all cofactors, and it seems that once you are dealing with Morgellons, a.k.a. Lyme disease, bottom line is everything becomes a factor. Even internal parasites become a factor.
It says glycine is an amino acid that has a single hydrogen atom at its side chain. It is the simplest amino acid with the chemical formula blah, blah, blah. Yet glycine is one of the proteogenic amino acids. It is encoded by all the codons starting with GG.
Glycine is one of the molecules in glutathione. Glutamate, glycine, and L-cysteine. Those are the three that go to make up the glutathione molecule.
Yeah, the Roundup Ready plant stuff is something I would like to see reduced back to regular farming.
Right. We should all go to Lowe's and Home Depot and insist on getting rid of that stuff. Cut the snake off at its tail here. Okay, back to disinfecting. This is something I would like some people in the audience to share. I found it the only thing that was able to get my life back. Someone else like to share?
I'm going to weigh in again, if I may. I found that disinfecting has helped my condition improve tremendously, and my go-to is the 100% strength ammonia. I spray, or I use my Victory sprayer, and I have an enzyme, the clean-up enzymes that I use. And I noticed an appreciable difference. The first time I did it, I couldn't believe all the stuff that I was sweeping up, and it's like only one person coming into the house. I thought perhaps
did you mix it?
On the corner. But there's such a difference once I started using the ammonia or the clean up enzymes that I'm not sweeping up the debris like I was before, which is basically the organisms.
Did you mix it with anything or just straight ammonia?
Straight ammonia. I still spray straight ammonia on my bedding. I have a camp cot, and I turn the mattress one way I spray, I turn it the other way I spray the base of it. I do this every day religiously. I also put it I change my bedding every day, and I put ammonia, if I don't wash the covers, I put ammonia in it into the dryer and put it on high heat, because if I don't get them out of my bedding, they're going to get back on me. So ammonia is my go-to.
But don't they come out of your body?
Anyone else like to share your experience, or whether you feel it is necessary or not necessary to disinfect your environment? Anyone else?
I have black spots and black filaments on my sheets every day, and so I put clean bedding on every single day. But I'm using Clean Green with the Victory sprayer, and that helps. Ammonia is too difficult for me. I can't take the smell.
Thank you.
I also put things in the dryer on high.
Did you say Clean Green?
We have enzymes in the store. They're called Clean 'em Up Zyme, which are stronger than Clean, more economical and stronger than Clean Green. Anyone else like to
try it?
Anyone else want to share your experiences with the need to disinfect or not to disinfect?
Richard, I have found the ozone generator helps to get rid of the mites.
Mm-hmm. All right. Did you have the filaments? Did you also have the filaments?
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yes, and I found that I would see like what looked like a little ball of hair on the floor, and if I would go to pick that up, even with a paper towel, something would bite me right through it. And then my finger would hurt, and I would have to scrub my finger with alcohol and soap, and finally, like a little white seed would pop out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else like to share your experience with the need to disinfect or not disinfect?
What did she say? Ozone?
Ozone.
Ozone generator.
We can talk about that more in the next section.
It's discussed in Chapter 3 as well of the book. Anyone else want to share your need to disinfect or not to disinfect?
Yeah, I think it's
yes.
My name's Nick. I'm from my name's Nick. I'm from New Jersey. I think it's a need right now. It's gotten so bad. I stay at a hotel because I'm disabled and I can't clean. And people don't think this is alive. It's alive. I can tell you that from my own experience.
Nick, do you have filaments? Do you have filaments that are coming out of your skin?
Well, I got, like Richard, I got white things coming out of my skin, black things, yes.
But are they filaments? Are they filaments, like hairs that don't belong there?
Yeah, they almost look like something I actually seen purge, black specks purge out of my skin, white stuff purge out of my skin, whether it's related to this or not. But that's
true, but do you see filaments, fibers coming out of your skin that don't belong there?
No, sir, just black.
Okay, so it may not be, Morgellons may not be involved in your situation. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. I found, this is Robin again, I found that using an air purifier, because there was so much of like some Morgellons fibers in the air, I started using air purifiers in rooms and I got better. I don't think that was like an accidental correlation. I think it was really interesting. And I stopped finding I could wipe a surface and it would be filled with teeny tiny little fibers. And once I started using the air purifier, that lessened dramatically.
Great. Anyone else want to share your experience with either giving or catching the Morgellons from another person or disinfecting? Anybody?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
Yes.
Hi.
I'm
Your
Greta
name?
from Texas.
Yes.
Hi, Greta.
Hi. You know, it's funny. Well, I've had this, I believe, all my life. I grew up on ranches and, around animals, what have you, ticks, ticks, what have you. And I believe I got it from Lyme disease, but I am now 55 and now realizing how crucial it has been because recently I found out about having the Morgellons. I knew I had fibers. I didn't worry about the fibers, but I have like human hair-like fibers in my body. Mm-hmm. I've been doing hair for 35 years, so I always thought it was human hair in my body that was getting in and not able to come out. But anyway, make a long story short, I do have the the fibers, and recently I now started contacting the mites and the I don't know what y'all called it. I just found this out last week. Springtails, the mites, the snow fleas, the the springtails.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I also believe that the hair that, sometimes it's my hair on my head that acts like it's my hair, but it's not my hair. It's the same fiber that goes into my body. I've been detoxing with all different types of, thanks to your soaps, the debriding soap and so forth. And I haven't done the diet, but I do believe I've had this all my life. I don't believe that. I think that you have to have a low immune system or so that somebody else can contact it from you.
What we don't want to do is we don't want to speculate or what we think. We want to speak from our experience, what you've been experiencing. If you have given it to someone else or someone else that you feel you caught it from, or if you need to disinfect or if you do not need to disinfect. Let's not get theoretical or hypothetical.
I do disinfect. I've always been very clean. I'm all about pneumonia. I'm all about vinegar, baking soda. In my daily habits.
But how do you know you actually need to? How do you know you're just not wasting your time doing it?
You can't be wasting your time because you do have to get a grip on these elements or the segments or these things that are flying around or. They have to be on contact surface. And I do believe that you can contact it if your immune system or your, I believe some people can get it and some people can't.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Some people are more susceptible. I said, I believe I've had it all my life. I've been diagnosed with arthritis, fibromyalgia, allergies, blah, 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 blah. Now I've come to the conclusion that everything I've always had goes back to this particular Morgellons. And I do believe I got it from probably tick, Lyme disease, maybe, back in the day they would spray for crops and such. I don't know. I don't know how I got it.
All right, so you can't pinpoint where the time you got it. You can't pinpoint.
Well, I do believe I got it all my life, or all my childhood, so I do believe I got it in life.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the call who knows how they got it and whether or not they got it from someone else or from sitting on an airplane or something that they know was occupied by someone before them? Or the salon? I mean, a big thing I get from many people, or they have salons, and they a year after the thing is there, they discover that something's wrong, and they find out by contacting me that they're dealing with filaments and fibers and Morgellons, and that they're giving it to everybody in the salon. Many of them, not everybody, because not everybody's susceptible. Maybe 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 50. We don't know. That's the kind of research. But as long as we're sticking around saying it's not contagious and you can't get it from someone else, our head's in the mud. That's my feeling. It is contagious.
I do think you can get it.
And we need research.
I believe that.
I would like to talk.
Not what we believe, what we know. That's what we want to know. I want to know what your actual experience is, not what you believe, what you actually experienced.
Well, Richard, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, this is Emily in Kansas. I would be happy to share my experience. First of all, I've never spoken live on any of your calls, although I have read your book and listened to many of these things on YouTube, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to try to help figure all of this out and to help people get their lives back. I've been dealing with this for over 4 years now. I had no problems with my skin at all until I was an in-home therapist going in and out of home, visiting people. And many of my clients had bed bugs, had roaches, had infestations of various sorts. And that was when I first started noticing little bumps on my jawline that were very itchy. Then I quit that job, and I do feel it is very important to clean your environment, because common sense ought to tell people that if you have any kind of open sore on yourself, that you would be susceptible to other co-infections. I've had MRSA at one point. I've had various skin infections, bladder infections, sinus problems, in which, you know, your skin is supposed to be a barrier that protects your body from the outside environment. So, I mean, obviously, if you have open, you know, lesions with things coming out of them, you need to wash your bedding, you need to vacuum, you need to wash your pets, you need to clean your furniture.
What is your experience? What is your experience? Do you have the filaments?
Yes, sir, I do. My experience is I have everything from weird white hairs to things that look like red fibers, filaments, excuse me.
Okay, great. Now, have you ever, do you know that if you caught it from someone, or if you've ever been party to giving it to someone else?
I don't know any other person that has these problems where I live, and my husband and kids do not have any of these symptoms. So to my knowledge, I have never given it to anybody, and I don't know of any person that I could have contracted it from. However, I live in an agricultural area, and, you know, combined with the visiting, you know, the dirty home, it was around the same time I had moved to this area in Kansas, and there's all kinds of farms and, you know, pollutants and things that are sprayed here, and you can see the chemtrails. So I personally feel, my experience, I have hypothyroid, and I have a couple other underlying health issues, and I wonder if maybe I am just more susceptible to picking up these things. But I do seem to be improving since I've been following your diet. I have been very careful with what I eat. I still am getting like a little sore here and there, but not near as bad as what they were. At one point, my entire back and arms and chest were, and face, neck, completely covered. I have a lot of scars now, which is discouraging, but I don't have as much itching. I have also been taking the glutathione. I have been taking oregano oil and garlic, and using some mint essential oils on my skin, which seems to help. My next step is I would like to get some more of the things on your website, but unfortunately I have spent so many dollars over the last 4 years trying to fix myself.
May I ask you, if you were to stop disinfecting, what happens? If you stop disinfecting your environment, what happens?
Well, if you stop disinfecting your environment, then your environment is going to be dirty and you're going to itch more.
But what happens to you when you do it? Have you ever done it? Have you ever missed disinfecting an area? What happened? What was your experience?
Yes, my experience is that if you don't, especially your bedding, I believe it was Robin that was saying that, or Ethel, if you don't keep up with washing your bedding, then you're, like my experience is that I will be more itchy. I will start finding the little black spots if I stop, like really doing the bath and the showers and cleaning
Great.
the bathroom is very important, all these things, then I will find more of these things that itch and more debris in my bed. So.
Thank you. So your experience is if you stop disinfecting, you have a problem.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to share? Yes.
Richard, I know I caught this from my dog, and she was running around in a bushy area where there's wild animals, and I started noticing problems on her, and I was petting her one day, and I felt something bite me. And to this day, I still have a little red mark on my finger, and this has been years ago.
Now, do you have filaments?
Where something bit me.
Do you have the filaments of Morgellons?
Yes.
You do have the filaments, okay. Now, do you find it important to disinfect, or is that not something you need to do?
Oh, yes. I like everybody's talking about, I wash my bedding. I use a sticky roller on my bedding. And if you look at it under a magnifying glass, you can see all kinds of these little hairs and strings and filaments.
When you wash your bedding, what do you use as a disinfectant?
I use either pour straight alcohol into the laundry, or I use that OxyClean.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Do you use anything else? Borax or anything of that nature?
Well, no, just the OxyClean and the alcohol.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else like to share where you caught it, or if you've given it, you feel that you've given it to somebody else, or what you need to do if you stop? What happens if you stop disinfecting? Yes.
What happened was that, can you hear me? I had a leaky skylight, and there was a bird's nest right up there. So for a while, I thought it was bird nest. And besides that, all of a sudden I had fleas in the house, and I have a very clean house. I had fleas, I had spider mites, I had everything in there. It was unbelievable.
Right.
So I didn't know what to do, and I got rid of all of my upholstered furniture, which was really very upsetting because it was very expensive and very pretty. And I left, and I went to a hotel. I mean, it was horrible, a horrible time.
Okay, but you didn't.
However, I do think in some instances it's catching, because my girlfriend told me that.
No, we're not. I'm sorry. Please don't be offended, but we're not interested in what anybody thinks. We're interested in what you actually experienced.
Well,
did you catch it or give it to anyone else?
I definitely have Morgellons, but I'm saying that I think it is catching, and I think I did give it to my girlfriend.
And how do you think that?
Had lots of what?
How do you think that?
Because she showed me that she had lots of bumps on her back, and she was very itchy.
And did she have any filaments?
Within a month.
Within a month?
But it was very scary because I don't want to do that to anyone.
I know, it's the worst feeling in the world. Thank you. And do you disinfect? What do you think would happen if you stop disinfecting? What do you use?
I said that I use the Victory sprayer, and I use Clean Green.
And if you stop disinfecting, what would happen? What if you sometime you must have messed up and didn't disinfect? What happened?
Well, I had more of the black dots and the filaments, but I am disinfecting now, and I still see them on my sheets. I also use a lint roller.
Okay. All right, thank you. You had shared before. Thank you very much. Someone who hasn't shared before, would you share with us what your experience is? Have you given it to anybody else? Has anybody contracted it from you, or you contracted it from somebody else? From maybe
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, this is Sherry in Michigan, and I'd like to share when I first know, and yes, I definitely have the filaments. I have mites. It's just severely worse on me, and it's probably going on over 10 years. And when I first noticed this is strange, so I'm just mentioning this, is right after people from a foreign country were hugging me. okay, Indonesia to be specific. And right after, there was mites appearing in the luggage. I don't know if it's coincidental or what. I was on a big festival trip, and there's people from all over the place there. Plus, I bought a T-shirt, didn't wash it first, and I have no idea. I don't do that anymore. I wash everything. And I want to just say that when I disinfect, I feel more peace and more calm. So to me, it seems to help.
What happens if you forget to disinfect, or if you miss disinfecting anything? What happens? Anything?
Oh, are you kidding me? Yeah, it's very hard for me because I'm trying to work full time and it's just getting impossible, and so it's exhausting. But if I don't, I just suffer greatly. It seems I feel like dirty and clawing, and then it just multiplies the mites, and I feel it's definitely something that is needed. Definitely.
So if you forget to disinfect or whatever, you're saying you get recontaminated and you have more itching and biting, more symptomatology?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. Anyone else want to weigh in and share your experience? Thank you very much.
Hi there.
Can I go ahead?
AC from Florida.
Yes.
2 months after the COVID shutdown, I saw my dog start to itch, and then I was sitting on my couch and I started itching. I see little black sand-like particles that come out of my skin in the bath. I also see the hair-like organisms a couple of the other women were speaking about just prior. I definitely need to clean my clothes and my bed daily. Clothes, I have to use ammonia. I use borax. I'll throw OxyClean, whatever I can in to clean them, because they don't always get clean the first time. I sometimes have to do it 2 or 3 times. I also have to spray my environment every day, all around, and the floors, particularly the bed. And as far as possibly giving it to someone else, one night during this whole ordeal, I left to go sleep at my mom's house, and then 3 days later she started itching. She's been able to eradicate what's happened, but she had to go through the same ordeal, washing everything every night, or washing the bedding daily and clothing, etc. I do have to say, I've also had guests at my house who slept over and appear to have had no symptoms. So, like I said, I agree with the genetic component in that. And this is really, really important to know, because I have a family member who is having a baby, and I do not want to spread something like this to a little baby. So I just wanted to say that, and I thank you for all that you do, all of you.
Okay, so your experience is that you feel you had given it to your mother, and fortunately you knew what to do, so she got rid of it pretty quickly, which, if you do know what to do, it can be a quick thing for most people. If you don't know what to do, it can be a nightmare for 30 years. That's the way it is. And disinfecting. Now, are you progressing in the program?
I am. I've been, I would say since the end of October, I've been listening to calls. I was introduced, I read your book, and, I've spoken with Robin, and, it's a daily thing, because I have to keep getting into different things that I've locked up, like, or put in bags, and as I open those bags, it's always like a kind of a crapshoot. Am I going to get infected with that? And I have to be very, very careful with everything I'm opening to try to clean this environment of mine.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else want to weigh in? Is it important for you to disinfect? Do you have, only if you have the filaments that identify Morgellons? And have you given it to anyone else, or has anyone else contracted it from you? That you can put the time and date, like 3 days, that would be typical. You get exposed in about 3 or 4 days, that's when you're going to start noticing the symptoms, oftentimes. Anyone else?
Richard, this is Jen. Can I speak to that?
Yes.
Again, I really appreciate everybody's discussion and adding to the phone call. I really do appreciate hearing the other people's stories and what they're doing. I think it helps us all. So thank you, Richard, Robin, and Chris. I think it's important to disinfect. I don't know if I disinfect with something called hypochlorous acid. I don't know if if anybody else disinfects with that, but it's been really helpful, and it's a non-toxic. It's less toxic, much less toxic than bleach. It's a pretty weak acid, but it works. I don't know if what your thoughts are on that, Richard.
Well, it doesn't matter what you're using. Hypochloric acid should do fine. But if you don't disinfect, what do you notice happening? That's what I'd like to know. If you forget or miss a place, what happens?
Things get much worse for myself. So I think it's essential to disinfect and keep up with cleaning the bedding and the clothing and just being aware. It's essential to disinfect, because just things get worse. I get itchier, and all my symptoms get much worse if I don't disinfect and keep up on it.
Thank you. Now, have you contracted it from someone, maybe in a salon or a friend, or did you perhaps instrumental in giving it to someone else?
No, I at this point I don't. I think it was a perfect storm. I mean, it was a tick bite in 2016, and then it was moving into a house that had hidden mold, and then that suppressed my immune system, and then that brought up the chronic Lyme disease, and then Morgellons came, so, and then also grief was in there. So I think it was a perfect storm. And when there
was no particular event that was notable. No. Okay, so all right, that many people have a notable event and many people don't, and that's fine. Thank you very much for sharing. Now, how are you doing in the program? Are you progressing? How long have you been in it?
Yeah, no, it's just been other than extreme fatigue and scalp issues, that's not why I'm really seeking out talking to people who have the fibers growing in on their scalp very bad, because I have to still buzz my hair every 4 days because of the itching and the burning, and it feels like there's wild fire ants on my scalp. So that's why I'm looking for kind of the buddy system out here as well, if anybody wants to, join up and help.
Well, in some of the other videos we've done, we have discussed the scalp protocols, how to clean the scalp. So you might want to look into some of those. They're all cataloged in the update I send out. So you're relatively new to the program, is that correct?
Sorry, Richard, could you repeat that?
Yes, you're new to the program pretty much?
I mean, I'm fairly new. I'm on the diet. I think that a diet is helping as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks very much. Anyone else like to weigh in? Whether you feel you've given it to someone else or contracted it from someone else or instrumental, what your need is to disinfect, how long you've been in the program, what kind of progress you have or haven't had, please share.
Hey, Richard, can I just say one thing? This may help people understand the research that I'm citing regarding Morgellons disease. The process that they used to identify the filaments was by their presence embedded in skin tissue. So if they got any filaments that were not embedded in skin tissue, they discounted those and did not include them in the research. A lot of people, in my experience, get confused by dust particles and Morgellons fibers because they're, they may be similar in size. Morgellons fibers, the only way you can really identify them is by the presence inside the skin tissue.
Right, and that's what I assume we've been talking about, the filaments that actually grow from the skin, not that are found around that might be fabric. Yeah. Okay,
Richard,
thank you.
are we allowed to, can I ask the guest a question? Are we allowed to ask Jeremy a question? This is Jen from Western Mass.
Well, right now we're discussing, you see, the Morgellons Foundation basically says, they hold this thing in Texas every year where they invite people to come, their conference in, I forget which city it is. Austin.
I'm not affiliated with the Charles Holman Foundation.
Right. Well, they hold this event every year. I was invited to go many, many years ago, and I declined because my experience is this stuff is contagious. And not to everybody, but hey, I've dealt with strongyloides, I've dealt with columbella, Morgellons, skin funk. What else can I catch? Lyme disease, it's almost all killed me. And I'm here 100% free. And there are many people who have gone through not everything, but much of this, and are 100% free using the diet. But I don't want to go there, expose myself. I mean, I can walk out in my yard if I want to and pick up columbella, you know. So, and I sometimes do. And I come back and I know how to deal with it. And it becomes a non-event in 24 hours.
That's a good way to pick up toxoplasmosis also.
Absolutely. So, anyone else like to share? We're discussing the need to disinfect. We'll get to a question and answer period in a little while where you can ask Jeremy other questions. Do you need to disinfect? Have you been contagious? Those are the primary subjects at this time. Anyone else like to weigh in? Well, I guess not. So, okay. Anybody have questions of Jeremy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Donald. I want to know how the Morgellons disease affects the blood in regards to the iron disruption. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, sure. So Morgellons wouldn't have any effect on that because Morgellons is just a skin condition that results from an underlying infectious process. It would be the infection that would affect the iron levels, the spirochetal infection, supposedly.
So would that be like the Lyme disease?
Yeah, or more commonly, probably, it would be the relapsing fever, the tick-borne relapsing fever.
Okay, because I was diagnosed with Borrelia miyamotoi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Could I ask Jeremy a quick question?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Jeremy, are you currently seeing Dr. Savely, or do you have any experience with Dr. Savely, nurse practitioner Savely?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can promote my YouTube channel or website on this show, but I've interviewed Dr. Savely 3 times, I believe now, and those interviews are up on YouTube. I'm currently seeing Dr. Cornish, Dr. Ebony Cornish, who is an associate of Dr. Savely. They work together towards developing more effective Morgellon treatment protocols.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on the call, too. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for your question.
Anyone else have a question? Gosh, come on. There must be 40 or 50 people on the call. Anyone else have a question of Jeremy?
Yeah, I have another one here. Donald, do you believe the biting and stinging is filaments exiting your body when you feel the biting and stinging in, like, your legs? Do you think it's filaments exiting your body?
No, I don't. I feel that is formication from the infection in the nervous system. I feel like the bacteria, when it starts destroying the tissues and the nerves that are bundled up in those tissues, I think that's what the resulting stinging and biting sensations are most likely. And the research, that's what it says.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? We did mention 5G a little bit ago, EMF. What do you feel the connection is there? Is that a cofactor or something that makes us more susceptible or more the disease more effective at destroying us?
Richard, I think some people may definitely have an electromagnetic frequency sensitivity. I'm not one of those people. I've always been involved in IT, information technology, and I've been around a lot of wireless devices. Inside the house, because I've had certification for wireless safety.
Hi, this is Janice from Fresno. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to say I find that Lysol helps the disinfecting process. It has helped me every day. I get up every day and just Lysol all my bedding and everything. And my question is, does anybody see the bugs popping off you?
I don't. It used to be when I woke up in the morning, I had a bed full of sand. A lot of people experience a sand pit in the bed. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is because these infections live in the skin and they're causing those cells to overproduce their proteins, the keratin and collagen. That's why you end up with a bed full of sand. You actually ended up with a bed full of artifacts that shouldn't have been produced in the first place. After I got on antibiotic therapy, that eased up almost right away. Probably within the first few months, a combination antibiotic therapy with a complementary supplemental regime. So I still get a few sores, maybe about half a dozen that randomly move around my body, but it's definitely not the train wreck disaster nightmare scenario that it used to be.
Regard to Lysol, I would say that you're very fortunate that Lysol works for you. For most people with these infections, Lysol only makes the organisms angry and doesn't really have much impact on the organisms for most of us.
I see. Does it like hot or cold? Is it better to be in a cold environment or a hot environment?
You know, for me, I have a hard time with humid environments, and I think that's because they facilitate airborne pathogens more. Right. I agree with Robin that air filtration is especially important. If spirochetal infections impair the immune system, and so you're going to be more susceptible, I think the literature reflects this, to potential airborne molds and yeasts. For example, my doctor was talking about she had a patient who had yeast growing in her house, and that was the source of her enhanced problems, but her body was already impaired by the spirochetal infection. So, you know, once your immune system's starting to take offline, these opportunistic infections have an opportunity to take advantage of this scenario. So I think filtering the air and the water is especially important. We have a 3-system reverse osmosis underneath the house at the main, and I change out those filters about once every 2.5 months.
Water quality is very important. We were talking about EMF, and you notice you work in the field and you haven't actually had any sensitivity that you've been aware of.
Yes, sir.
Many people, when they complete a questionnaire, notice that when they're around their laptop computer, they're more symptomatic. So it is true that many of us are, and many of us are unaffected by the EMF. Are you aware of why people are so upset about 5G coming on? What the issue is with 5G?
Yeah, I have a client who is involved in electromagnetic frequency awareness, and I was able to work on their website recently, and I learned quite a bit about why people are upset about that in particular. You know, EMF was actually brought to light recently in the mainstream media, or there was a show that spun off from the Breaking Bad series about Better Call Saul, and in that show, Saul Goodman's brother is actually affected by EMF sensitivity. So if you want to see a great character study of somebody who's going through that, what they go through if you don't experience it yourself, that's a really good show to watch to see what it's like, not only from that person's perspective, but from their family member's perspective as well.
Thank you. That's great. EMF can be really bad, and particularly with 5G. I watched the series of videos with experts talking about 5G, and the one that's most notable to me is, I don't remember the doctor's name. I don't know whether he's an MD or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or what, but he indicated that the frequencies are very much like the frequencies our brain uses to communicate, and that the 5G frequencies have the ability to open up the pathway between the blood and the cellular structure to let excessive calcium into the cellular structure, which when you get an overload of calcium in that's not supposed to be there, the whole endocrine system gets screwed up. Everything, immune functioning, everything goes out. In fact, Dr. Klinger noticed in his video that the hospital in Washington State where the first COVID cases were, that people died, they had just brought 5G into that hospital. So,
right.
So it's something we don't need to, it's not going to help us.
Can I ask a question of Jeremy?
Surely.
Jeremy, in light of the fact that these fibers come back as keratin and collagen, taking extra supplemental collagen, would that make it even worse?
Great question. Great question. So, I'm not speculating too much here that collagen is a nutritional supplement, and so what's happening is the connective tissues that are being affected from the underlying infection are being depleted at a faster rate than your body is able to produce them, and so supplementing with collagen, in my experience, was beneficial. Or it didn't have any kind of effect at all, no noticeable effect to, I felt maybe like it was helping a little bit, but I didn't like losing the extra $35 to buy the supplement.
I agree with that, Jeremy. In fact, the more effective collagen supplements, there are 5 types of collagen that you need to use and integrate at the same time, and not just 1 or 2 forms of collagen. And yes, your Morgellons is using up collagen, so it is also using up organic sulfur, MSM. So you want to supplement both. In fact, I have one lady who claims that she basically was cured by, we never get cured, but by consuming organic sulfur, that was instrumental. It happens to be part of the protocol that I have for Morgellons. And we use MSM gel on our skin as well. So highly recommended to take the MSM internally and use it on your skin, and to rebuild your cells from the inside out with collagen. We also have polyphenols in our store. Polyphenols are also good for rebuilding your skin from the inside out. I don't know if Jeremy will agree, but people who have been affected with Morgellons for many years, that destroys many layers of your skin, and it's going to take a while to get all of that, clean all that out. Jeremy, do you find, I recommend bathing 3 times a day using our debriding soap, and Dr. Saverly has been so kind to recommend us in the latter chapter of her book to help clean these organisms out, along with some kind of disinfectant. Could be peppermint oil, or could be apple cider vinegar, or could be pool shock, or any of the essential oils to destroy any organisms that may be coming out of the skin.
No, I think it's time to move past that. I think only 1 bath a day is appropriate. I definitely don't think a debriding agent is I think that's going to be damaging to the skin tissue while it's having a hard time already healing itself. The thing is the science demonstrates that Morgellons is associated with an infectious process. We know that's from a spirochetal infection.
I love what you said there. Now, will you please weigh in on this? He doesn't think that debriding your skin is important or beneficial, and he doesn't believe, will you please weigh in on that, audience?
Yeah, can I finish first?
Sure.
Okay. So, treating the underlying infectious process has been demonstrated to heal the condition. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyone like to share your experience working with a debriding soap and super MSM gel or anything of that nature and clearing up your skin?
Could I share? This is Jen again in Western Mass.
Yes.
Sure. I bought pretty much all of that. I bought the debriding. I bought the MSM gel. I on the King's diet. And I just have a really quick question for Jeremy. And once again, I really do appreciate the productive discussion back and forth where viewpoints are shared, and so it's not a one-size-fits-all, because I don't think this disease, this is not one-size-fits-all. I don't know if Jeremy agrees with me or if Richard agrees, but I've used those on my scalp. My scalp is the worst, Jeremy, and I know that Dr. Savely was saying, I've also been to Dr. Ebony Cornish as well.
Yeah.
And Doctor, I have used the briding, and so I'm just wondering, they've both said to me, Savely was in a very excellent interview that you had. I appreciate. I didn't even realize this was you. So the interview with Savely was excellent, and I appreciate that. She said people have come to her and said that their hair is not their hair anymore, and I think that's definitely what I'm experiencing. And do you have any suggestions, Jeremy, regarding that because I've had to buzz my hair, and it's incredibly painful, and been suffering with it now for well over a year, and it's really debilitating. I mean, if I don't, so the debriding, I've used it for a month. And what is your recommendation, and what is that when your hair isn't your hair? What is your opinion on that, and how do I grow back my natural hair? Because I have tried the debriding soap and it didn't work.
Can I interrupt before you answer, Jeremy? I just want to say, based on, so sometimes it takes months, okay? And personally, nothing for me ever worked without the diet. I don't know if you were on the diet, but what I have found was the baths were, if you're on the diet and you use the protocols for the hair, it gets better. And the book has very specific protocols for the hair. And Ethel has one that she developed. But here's the thing, your natural hair grows back. I found the baths were crucial because I was so miserable. I know, Jeremy, you said, you only have maybe 6 lesions. I have 0 lesions. I mean, the diet and the bathing and then the essential oils and feeding my skin have brought back my natural skin. My hair has grown back. And I don't have lesions. I don't have bites. I have very little things, very few things coming out of my skin as I heal. And I think that the baths were like a big part of that. I don't take baths anymore. I take like 2 showers a day now. But when it first started, I was taking 3 baths a day. As I got better, I went to 2 baths, then I went to 1 bath, then I went to no baths. But I think that it's part of this. I never would have slept through the night initially if I hadn't been doing the baths. Because it took a while for the diet to kick in, and I created my own concoction of coconut oil with like 4 different essential oils, and I would cover my skin with that 3 times a day. I mean, I know I have Morgellons, but I was also dealing with co-infection, so the combination of all these things, I'm just saying the baths were pretty important.
I think the lady sharing now.
Can I just make a clarification, Robin? The question, I just want to make a clarification. The debriding soap, actually, it has helped, but it hasn't helped my scalp. And also the King's diet has helped, but it hasn't helped my scalp. And that's why I was just asking Jeremy about his opinion about that, when the hair is in your hair and what else, because I've been doing it for months and months and months, and I spent a lot of money, and but it has helped my skin. I want to definitely, and the King's diet has been incredibly helpful. So thank you, Richard, and I appreciate it greatly. And I bought the book, and but my question for Jeremy is just what to do about the hair. That my hair isn't, no matter what I do, I've used everything, and it's still, I have to So what does that come from, Jeremy, when your hair, it feels like it's like fungus basically growing in and fiberglass growing in. Could I get your opinion on that and what's worked for you, Jeremy?
Yeah, that fiberglass feeling hurts the most, definitely. You know, Dr. Savely told me in that interview that in Mexico they call it cactus man disease. And that's literally what it feels like. I think a lot of that is formication, the feeling. Like I was talking about the infection being involved in the nervous system. And of course the cells that are making your hair when they become infected, they may make malformed, and usually they would make normal strands of hair. Morgellons is a resulting condition of an infectious process, and treating that underlying infection has been demonstrated to heal the condition. You know, for bacteria, specific antibiotics are all that's going to work, and in some people who have had it, like, and Robin, I wanted to respond to you. You said you had it for 6 years?
No.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm mistaken.
No, I got, my home got infested with mites, fleas, bed bugs, and springtails, and then developed Morgellons, and it took about 3.5 years to get well. And I got well.
So I was probably exposed to the infection in utero, and I developed skin ulcerations early on as a child. The longer you have an infection in your body, the more opportunity that infection has to colonize. And the more you go through life, the more infections are going to be added to those colonies. You know, you can be bit by ticks several times in your life. You can be bit by fleas and mosquitoes. You can also have unprotected sex several times throughout your life and pick up more infections that are going to get added to those bacterial biofilms and make them more virulent. Yes,
well,
sir.
I had chronic Lyme for 20 years.
And there is some evidence that demonstrates that Lyme disease can be transmitted sexually.
Right. I agree with that.
Well, anyway, back to the lady with the hair problem. Have you done the protocol that we have outlined several times in our calls for the hair?
Yeah, I have. And
you've done it like 3-4 times a day?
Yep, and I've pretty much been by the book. And the only thing that's not dissipating, that's why I was going to ask Jeremy what he meant by cactus man's disease, because it definitely feels like fiberglass, and it's the only thing that right now that, and of course, extreme fatigue. I've been bedbound with this, been bedridden. So I'm just wondering, and I was a really energetic person, so I'm just wondering, Jeremy, what did they suggest for the cactus? Because this is the first time I'm hearing of it. Your terminology.
One of the things, one of the phenomenon that's demonstrated in the literature, the scientific studies about Morgellons, is that oftentimes the infection will cause the cells to produce the proteins in reverse of the direction that they normally would. So you may have a hair that's growing down into the dermis instead of outwards where it should normally go. And they'll fill up the hair follicle and become a hardened comedocast. And that's where a lot of people pull out these, quote, white worms, are really just chunks of collagen that are clogging up the pores. Bottom line, for bacterial infection, antibiotics often are the only thing that can work with some people.
And they haven't worked for you, though. You went through what the other doctor, the one that Jeremy's going to, and her approach didn't work for you.
And longer durations also. Some people, you know, they may not be on those antibiotics for long enough, or they may not have an appropriate complementary regime to make sure that their microbiome isn't deplenished of the beneficial bacteria that helps you digest your food.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we don't have any precise answer for you. Anyone else have a question?
I have a really quick question for Jeremy regarding why do you think that doctors, like, I won't mention the doctor that you're going to, but I've had a, you know, why do they charge $500 and $600 and $700 an hour?
Well, honestly, my doctor does not charge. No, I mean, but the thing is, though, is that that's about how much I charge for some of the services I provide doing voiceover work and website design. I mean, it's just all about earning a living. It's not like they're trying to take advantage of the patient. My doctor is especially beneficial about working with my budget in mind. You know, she gets creative with some of the recommendations she makes because she knows I'm not a millionaire. I can't, you know, get a lot of these treatments that I really need. She wanted to be very aggressive with the antibiotic therapy, and I just didn't have the insurance to cover it. So, you know, sometimes you have to do what you got to do. I don't see her often enough to where the visits really feel expensive to me, and every time I see her, we're benefiting from taking a science-based approach to my disease process, which has been going on for potentially decades. I do think that experiencing emotional trauma, and I believe the research reflects this as well, will make you more susceptible to opportunistic debilitation from latent infections. So a lot of that is having everything you need, including the assistance. People can't do this on their own. They have to have people who can help them with, you know, if they need some help, and they need to be able to offer some help in return. And that coordination, I feel, is what I have with my doctor, where before I was just blindly, you know, looking for any kind of solution. When I got with my doctor, my lesions went from 110% to 4% today. And not only that, but I experienced a cognitive improvement that I wasn't even aware I had been suffering from. But I did have some memory loss. I had a low-lying level of aggression that completely went away when my doctor prescribed the particular antibiotic combination. I started pulling those spirochetes out of the biofilms that was in my brain. So, yeah, I mean, with bacterial infections, and I don't think Richard would disagree with me on this, for bacterial infections, often antibiotics is the only answer, like with syphilis in particular.
Well, I would, syphilis I can't address, but when it comes to Lyme disease, I would say that antibiotics, well, it's a little confusing because some of the research done by Strickler says that antibiotics don't work long-term for Lyme disease. That's what they're finding is. But I can say that when I was on those antibiotics, I mean, I was on cloud 9. And so when I came off after 6 months, my life fell apart again. And Lyme disease almost killed me. You know, I couldn't write my name. I couldn't drive a car because I couldn't keep my foot on the gas pedal. It was so painful. I had to use a stick to control the gas pedal so that my leg wasn't so painful. And when I added and boosted glutathione, which is, we've talked about it many times, we use a specific, it is not glutathione, it's a glutathione booster that we talked about L-cysteine a little bit earlier. It's a combination of D-ribose and L-cysteine, which goes into the cell. The D-ribose feeds the mitochondria, producing ATP, and we could write a volume about that. The L-cysteine is a limiting molecule of the glutathione molecule. The glutathione molecule clears up the toxicity that the Lyme spirochete likes. It protects the DNA against free radical oxidation, free radical damage. It is the major anti-inflammatory. So when I added that, my symptoms went from 100 down to 5. Down to 5 in 6 weeks. And then later on, I happened upon acillin, which is said to be a natural antibiotic, antifungal, antiparasitic, antiprotozoan. And then my symptoms over the course of years have gone to 0.5. I had no symptoms anymore of Lyme disease. So I wrote and I did a lot of research. There's rifing, and we talked about EMF, electromotive. You know, there are frequencies that are healthy, and not all frequencies are bad. Rifing is a specific frequencies that are beneficial for one's health and improving and dealing with bacteria, viruses, cancer, all kinds of things. But But nevertheless, I suggest that before you go to treatment, or if you are in treatment, that you do the nutritional thing. The multi-mineral, the multivitamin that we use is specifically designed by a doctor in England for Lyme disease. Then we have the Max 1, which boosts glutathione by 270% and is the only one that's compatible with the diet. Diet is important. And then we have the acillin, we call it garcillin, which is the natural antibiotic. And we use bioavailable minerals, coral calcium, that are bioavailable. They don't have to be broken down or assimilated to get the minerals available. So you put those four together, and you may not need treatment. And if you do use treatment, it's going to make it a lot better.
Yeah, that is true. Some patients actually, their condition resolves, but I believe that's their infection goes into a latent stage. That course that I took on biofilms basically suggested that everybody has infections. It's just whether or not their immune system is capable of holding off the debilitation.
Now, speaking of biofilm, I happened upon a supplement, the kinase enzyme, which basically I was looking for an enzyme to dissolve chitin and ran across this particular enzyme, and it was actually promoted for dissolving biofilm. So we've added that to the protocol, and so it's like a double-edged sword. It helps with the biofilm, and it also dissolves chitin, which may be integral in fungal growth to minimize fungal growth.
But the thing about biofilms is that once you dissolve them, everything that's living in them floods out into your bloodstream.
And that's why we use the glutathione, the acillin, and the vitamin to deal with that.
But if you've got, like syphilis living in there, you probably want to use the penicillin.
Hey, I'm not dealing with penicillin. I'm only dealing with my experience with my Lyme disease and the experience of many people that I work with and working with. I've coached, I don't know, hundreds of people to get their lives back, and they're successful. Some of them are on this call today. Many of them are so busy living their lives, they don't even have time to come to the call.
That's cool, man. Yeah, anytime somebody can get their life back.
Can you share which antibiotics you are taking? Just share which ones that they may not be the same for everybody, but which ones you are taking that actually helped you.
That's actually one question that I'm going to avoid, and because you just said it right there, it's not beneficial for everybody. So the last thing I see there's 27 people on this call is for somebody to hear what I'm taking and then run out and order it online and then experience.
No, I understand what you're saying, but some people have been, say, on Doxy, which hasn't worked. Doxy in combination with something else may work. I'm not asking you specifically to give me a protocol. I'm just asking inquiring.
Are you asking about doxycycline?
Yeah.
That's typically used with Lyme disease in the initial treatment when you have the bullseye rash, and that's when it's typically used. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. It's also used as a prophylaxis for syphilis. But what I would recommend is the functional medicine. Dr. Ginger Sabley's book. She talks about a specific antibiotic protocol regime in her book.
It's also in my book as well, her regime. It's listed in my book.
Oh, I got them both. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Anyone else have a question?
Can I just add to the question, Jeremy, about you didn't get to actually just you just got talked over a while back regarding the cactus hair from Mexico or something.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that? Just and also if you think Dr. Sabley's protocol would work for something that's stubborn like that, and if what your thoughts are?
Yeah, sure. Dr. Sabley's protocol is going to be effective for Morgellons probably a majority of Morgellons patients particularly. So I do think that condition where the follicular casts develop as a result of the proteins being produced in reverse and drilling down into the skin tissue, as is cited in the History of Morgellons study. I think that could be part of an infectious process that's independent of Morgellons disease. That's another thing I wanted to keep it in line with your question, though. There are a lot of conditions that can result from an underlying infectious process that can appear alongside the Morgellons condition. But that condition in particular, as is demonstrated to be associated with spirochetal infections, the follicular cast drilling down into the dermal layer, then I would refer back to it's an underlying infectious process, and antibiotics may be the answer for that. Does that answer your question, or can I answer it a different way, or?
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. I really appreciate your thoughtful, very detailed answers with everybody, and I appreciate your take on things. But yeah, this is the primary issue. I'm trying to figure out why, I have been diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease and Bartonella and Babesia. And
those are big
so
ones,
I have.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Jeremy?
Those are big infections. Bartonella is not associated with Morgellons disease, but a lot of Morgellons patients have Bartonella co-infected with their other underlying spirochetal infections. Babesia is common with Lyme disease because it's a tick-borne infection, but it's a blood parasite. It's a protozoa. It literally crawls inside the red blood cell and eats it from the inside out.
Oh yes, I'm definitely very familiar with it. And I'm wondering if Dr. Savely is there a way to reverse this hair issue, the cactus fiberglass issue? Is there a way to reverse it? Because I've had it for 1.5 years now, and it's incredibly painful, and it's draining and fatigue. It feels like it's quickly killing me. So I just wanted to get your take on that, if it's reversible through antibiotics.
Yes.
Because I'm
and the research demonstrates that the people who have taken antibiotics, for the most part, they heal. There's a small portion of patients, myself included, who don't heal with the aggressive therapy. And sometimes in Dr. Savely's book, she cites that it could take up to 6 years even on treatment before somebody enters full remission. So it really depends on your exposure level, a lot of other factors too. I firmly believe that poverty plays a lot into the disease pathogenesis. Being able to afford the food that you need to eat is expensive. All the supplements that your doctor recommends, they can be expensive. So, yes, that is reversible, and in my case, it was reversible. But it's taken a long time. A lot of times you get worse before you get better because as the bacteria dies off, it releases a lot of toxins. You want to get it cleared out of your system. A lot of time your biological functions could be impaired because of just years and decades of neglect. Smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol will literally clog up your system like putting diesel in a regular car. So, yeah, you want to do the right things, but that can be expensive. So, ultimate answer, sometimes antibiotics are the only answer, and oftentimes they're the most appropriate.
And can I ask, Jeremy, how long it took you to get rid of the scalp issue, the fiberglass issue? The
fiberglass issue, sure. Fiberglass issue I had mostly in my back. And to be specific, we're talking about a feeling of having splinters in your skin. That's what it feels like. It's painful as hell. But I still get those sometimes. Like I said, I get about a dozen small lesions. They don't turn into the big open moon craters with the raised with the gunk flowing out of them and everything like they used to be. But there's still enough to where it's a nuisance. Getting my mind back was the biggest thing, being able to think and function. Go back to work, and I just started a new company last year doing the voiceover stuff. But sometimes it takes a long time. I started therapy with my doctor in September of 2017.
Yeah, you do have a very good voice, Jeremy.
Thank you. I've had a lot of experience on the mic.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate your information so much. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to ask a question or share your experience with debriding soap? We really didn't get too many people weighing in on that, whether they're wasting their time with our debriding soap or whether it's really working.
This is Askil. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What I'd like to ask, is a nanotechnology, because I'm hearing this is nanotechnology. A lot of times, I'm reading this, I don't know, because I'm hearing that this nanotechnology. I want your opinion on that, please.
Great question. The answer is no. Morgellons is not associated with nanotechnology.
I would say we don't know enough at this time to say it is or isn't, keeping an open mind. But at this point, I don't think it's worth discussing because the idea is to get your life back. And if it's nanotechnology, there's nothing you or I or anybody that we know is capable of doing anything about at this point.
Yes, very much for the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question or like to share your experience? Hello?
May I have a question, please? Angela from Chicago.
Yes, hi.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask Jeremy, my problem started 3 years ago after I was bit with some unknown insect into my ear. And from the very beginning, I felt like I was attacked by little tiny worms. I was diagnosed by doctor with Morgellons, but now listening to Jeremy and listening to him saying that filaments are main characteristic for Morgellons, I don't think that I fit in this group. So I'm just asking his opinion that if I don't have any filaments, if I can consider myself as Morgellon patient.
No, but the way you would determine that is with a microscope, 60 power magnification or greater. And Morgellons can present in patients with unbroken skin. I actually know a group of them right here local to me, but they don't have sores. I think what happens is sores is when the patients are able to have an opportunity to have the condition elicited. That's when people are having skin problems. And with the lesions open, the doctor can put the microscope down in there and observe if any filaments are being produced underneath these, embedded in the skin tissue. So unless you've had that process where a doctor has been able to look inside at your skin with a microscope, then I can't say it's been particularly ruled out. But does that answer your question?
Thank you. Well, I don't have lesions, but I can see like still little white worms in my skin, very little tiny worms under my skin. So
those in Morgellons patients, those are actually chunks of collagen and keratin. The same bacteria that infects the cells that make the Morgellons filaments infect the same cells that make other artifacts. The black specks, in the early research, it was demonstrated are tightly wound balls of black filaments using scanning electron microscopy. They're very tiny, so they had to use a super high-powered microscope to be able to elicit that. So yeah, I mean, you may be dealing with an underlying infectious process. You may not necessarily be dealing with Morgellons, but Morgellons is just a simple skin condition that results in some patients.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you. I appreciate your answer.
Yes. Thank you for your question.
You. Anyone else like to share or ask a question?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Yeah. My name's Bob. I'm from Lake Worth, Florida.
Hey, Bob.
And, my wife has, she's been having itching conditions for quite a number of years, but she's on a lot of different drugs, and, naturally, many drugs cause conditions like that. But it wasn't until, last year, she had she had, pneumonia, where she went into the hospital. She had died 3 times, spent almost 4 months in the hospital and, other facilities. And once she came home, she seemed to be, we were helping her get better, but she didn't seem to be itching much. And then maybe about 3 months later, she started itching really bad. And, I was putting this steroidal cream all over her body. And then, and I probably, within a couple months, I started itching. And we went to several doctors. One of them wanted to treat her, and I said, well, Doc, I'm itching too. So that didn't work. And then we found your book. We even got the hard copy here, and I ordered bottles of your 100% debriding soap. Most of the way through my second bottle now, and it seems to help some. At first I didn't realize that I needed the other stuff in there, like baking soda or borax or whatever, but been using that for over a month now. But I seen a doctor back in December, and she was probably the least experienced out of all the doctors that we had seen. But she seen the rash that I was getting around my waistline, the lesions, and she diagnosed them as scabies, which I believe was a misdiagnosis. But the medicines that she gave us, along with the steroidal creams, actually helped us get better for about maybe a couple months or whatever, and then naturally we started itching again, and just went to the doctor recently, and I got some more of that medicine. I got to a stage where I had to do something that just was crazy. So she took a biopsy this time, and she said she doesn't think it's scabies, but she gave us some of the same medicine. And I was the first time when I started itching, when we first learned about it and heard your calls, I was disinfecting, went to like a whole gallon of Mediclean and a few gallons of ammonia that I was using mostly in the laundry room or when my wife wasn't around because she has breathing conditions. But she kind of banned me from using that now. And I'm wondering if there's something else I can use to disinfect the house.
Well, let me ask you a question first. Are filaments associated with what you're experiencing, you and your wife? Are you experiencing filaments growing from your skin?
I mean, most of the lesions that we have, we can itch and not necessarily have any lesions there,
Right, but filaments. Are there any hairs or filaments growing from your skin that really don't belong there?
No, I actually got a bright black light out and went over our skins, and we didn't see any filament.
Okay, well, they could be microscopic, as Jeremy suggested before, and you might need a 60 power. But other than if there are no filaments, then you're not dealing with Morgellons disease, and you're dealing with something else. Could be some kind of mite infestation, or could be Columbella. It's hard to tell, but it's not Morgellons.
Okay, what would you suggest to disinfect the? I've been doing the laundry, the bedding.
Well, the next question is: are you on the diet? Are you both strict with the diet?
I would say definitely not.
All right, then the next thing is I don't know how to help you, and I don't know if Jeremy does either, because you're not dealing with Morgellons. Because unless you're strict with the diet, these things they just keep breeding and multiplying, and it's a never-ending cycle, and you can disinfect all you want, and you're not getting them out of you.
I've got a couple of questions about that, actually. You said that you and your wife have lesions?
Just like the little red spots, probably 1/8 inch in diameter, most of them. But, you know, now there are some that are, you know, much larger and itchier.
You can get a 60 times microscope off Amazon for about $5. Jewelers use them often, but you want to make sure that it's 60 times magnification, 50 times, and stick them down into that sore. Have you ever done that before? Stuck a microscope into those lesions? That's how you find out if you have Morgellons or not. So I can't say for sure that you would necessarily know that you have Morgellons or not until you've taken a 60-time microscope and stuck it into those sores to see. You'll see real quick, too. You'll see a bunch of weird-looking, strings-looking things, obviously, inside the skin. So, but let me know, or let us know if you do. I would recommend the functional medicine, Lyme-literate medical doctors.
But if he does find those strings in there, then he has just acknowledged, or he's just demonstrated that it's contagious, because first one person, then the next person.
No, that doesn't mean it's contagious. I mean, spirochetal infections are fairly prevalent. Like I said, I learned in that class that pretty much everybody has the infections. It's just they may not have the opportunistic debilitation for disease to present. You know, people can go generations with these infections and not ever experience debilitation.
But how does it happen that one comes out of the hospital with it, and then a few months later, the other one picks it up?
Well, because after that person came back from the hospital, life got real hard around the house. They had to do a lot more cleaning and a lot more responsibility for taking care of the household. And that added stress allowed for the opportunistic infection to take advantage of the impaired immune state from the emotional stress.
But what's that got to do with the second person picking it up?
That second person had the infection. Maybe they had it already before they were married. Maybe they sexually transmitted it to each other. They can carry
that would make them contagious.
No,
if they sexually transmitted it, would be contagious.
That's infectious. What's the difference between infection and contagion?
Well, if you infect someone else, then it's contagious.
No, that's an infection. You transmitted an infection.
All right, so it's infectious but not contagious. So we're looking at semantics.
Well, it's important, though, when you're talking, especially when you're talking about medical terms and infections, to be precise. No, Lyme disease is not contagious, but we do know that it's infectious.
But somebody who goes to a salon and comes back home with it, that's infectious or contagious?
What do you mean comes back with it?
Well, somebody goes to a salon and has their hair done, then comes home, and shortly thereafter they start the symptomatology. And then a week or so later they start noticing the filaments growing and the itching, and it gets worse from there. Or they go to a hotel and they stay overnight, then they come home. Is that infectious or is that contagious?
I mean, what else is going on in their life? There's got to be a lot more than just those visits, right?
Not necessarily. There's no study. There has to be a study, and nobody has studied this. There's no research. No real research.
Yeah, the Centers for Disease Control did a study that determined it wasn't infectious.
That was 2008. That was a study done in a hospital that they already were saying that Morgellons is a thing of your imagination. That was a ridiculous study. That was self-diagnosed people that were used in that study.
No, that's not true at all. That was actually a 2012 study, and all of the patients, the 12 that were included in the end of that study, tested positive for Lyme disease on a standard ELISA.
Are you saying they did a second study?
No, that's the original study that I'm talking about.
Well, that original study is so full of holes.
When you read it, though, it makes sense. I mean, and what you can determine from it is that everything they say in that study has been demonstrated in the subsequent research that I'm citing.
Well, I think we're going to agree to disagree on that one because there are too many factors involved. In fact, we're talking about, for instance, Columbula. Columbella can jump from anywhere from 8 to 12 inches. So Columbella mites can transfer these diseases. So when we're talking about being contagious or being infectious, we need to get rid of semantics, because if you are in the vicinity of someone and the mite jumps from them and infects you, that's a contagion.
No, you just said it right there. It's an infection. It infects you.
It's a contagion, though, that infects you.
But Richard,
No,
you're talking about organisms. You're talking about an infestation that you can get the vectors, but not necessarily just straight Morgellons.
Well, that's
which is a
for instance. For instance,
right, I'm sorry.
Well, if Morgellons is contagious, then if somebody sheds a filament and I pick it up in my hand and I get it, then that's contagious.
No, in Dr. Savely's book, she says specifically that the filaments themselves are not contagious. She's been working with
study. She has no study.
Dr. Savely has worked with thousands of Morgellons patients.
And she doesn't have it.
Right, because it's not contagious.
That is not scientific at all, because that's her experience. But not everybody is susceptible to it. Is it 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 50? We don't know. She may not be susceptible. She may not have the genetic predisposition that you were talking about.
I agree with you there.
Okay? So it doesn't mean that because she hasn't picked it up, it's not contagious. That is irresponsible for her to even write that.
No,
I think you guys are talking about semantics.
That's right. We're talking about semantics.
Yeah, but the thing is if you have the predisposition, then it is contagious for you, right?
No, because it's caused by an underlying infectious process, and treating that infectious process is demonstrated to heal the condition.
Okay.
That just, to me that sounds like a litany of words, but...
That's what got accepted for peer review in the United States, in Canada, in China, in Australia. That's what we're going with the medical professionals.
Well, we look at this also because like I said, the entomologists say that Columbella. Do you think Columbella can affect the skin and cause up many of these symptoms that we're talking about, itching and be a factor? What is your opinion on Columbella?
Yeah, if Columbella can transmit spirochetal infections, then yes, I definitely believe it can result in Morgellons in a patient who, as the research is seeming to indicate, is genetically predisposed to developing the condition.
All right, but do you think Columbella can be a factor of itself to be a skin parasite without Morgellons and end up creating all the problems with the rashes and not the rashes, but the lesions. Thank you. The lesions, the itching and the biting. Is that possible?
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know that much about that particular insect. That's an insect? Yeah, but I don't.
No, it's not. Yeah, again, semantics. It's not an insect. It has its own classification, but we're talking about semantics, and that's the point I like to make with you. The semantics don't mean crap.
Well, no, but what means something is what we're able to demonstrate, and what has been demonstrated is able to be repeated. And that's why I'm able to say that Morgellons is a resulting condition of an underlying infectious process.
That's what they're saying. But the experts also say that Columbella cannot infect or cannot be an organism to consume flesh, if you want to say it, or to stay on the human host, because then Columbella cannot bite because they do not have mouth parts. That's what they say.
There's a fungus that can eat your skin right off the bone, but that has nothing to do with Morgellons.
That's true. Yeah. But what we're saying is that because the experts say something, it doesn't mean that it's true.
Dinner? Yeah.
Well, it's really, like I said, what could be...
Could you mute your phone?
Somebody
We're just talking about dinner. Could you mute your phone? Star 6. Yes, thank you.
I was starting to get hungry on the dinner.
I know.
Yeah. Richard, and I do want to apologize for mispronouncing your name in my YouTube video. I pronounced it Richard Kuhns. It's Richard Kuhns, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't get into semantics.
Tomato. Just want to show proper respect.
Some people say Jones.
Appreciate you letting me be on your show.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Jeremy. I think we could go on for hours and hours. I don't know if we're ever going to see. You see, to me, it seems like there are two different universes about this Morgellons thing. There is the foundation that says it can't be contagious, but you're saying it can be infectious. So that's like President Trump saying COVID isn't a big threat, you know. That's like downplaying it. Whether it's infectious or contagious, who gives a shit? The end result is the same. Somebody else picks it up.
Well, I mean, it's the difference of cleaning your house up 3 times a day or, you know, just getting the antibiotics.
Well, the true. When I was on Dr. Bransfield's antibiotics, like I shared in the beginning, it was cloud 9. I had no symptoms of Lyme disease. I had no symptoms of parasites. I didn't have to clean my house. It was cloud 9. And at that time, fee was like only $350 and maybe $75, and it wasn't covered by insurance, but it was well worth it. And within 6 months of going off of the antibiotics, because I was afraid, and it may have been stupid on my part, I was afraid that if I stayed on the antibiotics, my immune functioning would be compromised because when I eventually went off, it wouldn't know how to work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what my doctor's afraid of. And you can also damage yourself being on antibiotics so long.
And we have some people that have been on antibiotics so long that their bodies can't assimilate food.
Yeah. So that's something my doctor's particularly concerned about. I mean, I take digestive enzymes, prebiotics, probiotics.
Right.
I take the rainbow in powder form in my smoothies. But yeah, definitely nutrition. I'm glad you guys are hitting on that because that's especially important.
But the other thing, I just want to say, Richard, you know, a lot of times, the antibiotics work, and when you get off of them, you're reinfected, but it's because you haven't dealt with the vectors in your environment.
Well, that's the whole thing. Yeah.
And so, you know, like with me, when I opened that box, my house became reinfested with bedbugs, mice, and springtails. And they all carry Morgellons to me. So I have to do the disinfecting and the exterminating because there is no exterminator that's going to help me. Believe me, I've called everyone in Western Mass. And as I get rid of the vectors, I get better. And the diet, and do the diet and the vitamins and everything else. But
see, I look at it this way: the diet I really wasn't on the diet when I got, you know, with the Lyme disease. You know, I did the nutritional stuff. Are you okay, Peggy? And the nutritional stuff was very beneficial. In fact, I invented my own discovery of how to get rid of my own Lyme disease. And because a lot of other people get their lives back with my protocol, I can only assume that it works for others too, because basically Lyme disease seems to be associated with 100% of us, according to what you're sharing here, Jeremy. I was thinking only 90%.
Infections. Everybody, 100% of people are carrying infections. Whether or not they experience disease and debilitation in their lifetime as a result of several other factors. Now, besides just being reinfected, I want to point out that you can carry latent biofilm even after treatment. Antibiotics, and so that could cause a relapse in symptoms. If you're like me and you've been smoking cigarettes and drinking most of your life, partying your ass off and not taking care of yourself, then you probably have latent biofilms all through your bones, your organs, and it's going to take years and years of treatment to erode those things, kill the bacteria and the viruses and whatever else is living inside of them, and then flush them out of the body. And go ahead, boss.
Yeah, when it comes to biofilm, what generally is the approach? Because unless you get rid of the biofilm, you can't get to the spirochete.
You know, there's some great research coming out about THC being able to eradicate biofilms in the brain in Alzheimer's patients.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know you guys have medical marijuana up in New Jersey. We don't have it here in South Carolina. We're fighting like hell, but it's hard. We don't have ballot initiatives here, so everything we do relies on the legislature being able to agree on something. And as you know, the South.
Unfortunately.
So, okay. All right, it's been wonderful having you, Jeremy. I think we'll probably have you back 10 times again if you like.
I know.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's two different worlds, and it's going to take a little bit of time for us to be able to converge and then be able to really appreciate this relationship. But I feel positive about it. You guys have a top-notch production, and I definitely believe that you are helping people, especially eating better and being more mindful about the kinds of potential vectors in their environment. It is important to keep your house clean. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I always used to say I had the cleanest house. I had the cleanest house in the world, but I was still being infected by these things. So,
yeah, I know.
So, yeah, it goes beyond cleanliness, but nevertheless. Well, so I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Jeremy, and wish you the best of health and success and getting your life back totally and 100%. As we strive for every one of us who are here. So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, it's been really wonderful to have you here, Jeremy. I was skeptical, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
I'm glad it worked out good like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Well,
thank you.
Usually we go into a stress management segment, but I think we are out of time really today. We've gone over it because I think Jeremy alluded to it before that stress can be a factor, and we know that, and particularly when it brings along confusion, anger, frustration, upset, and depression, and many of us get depressed, and these things and the stress only accentuates the issue. So we usually have a stress management segment, and you can go to YouTube, our channel, subscribe to it. Every week we do a segment on stress management.
And then
please do a *6. Whoever's on the phone, please do a *6. So go to YouTube, look at any of our stress management segments. Sometimes Robin sings her Happy Cells song, and one day I'll get brave enough and sing along with her. So, and laugh as much as you can. When we love you all, keep coming back. We're here so that you'll be safe. Because of you guys, because I stuck with it, I got my lives back. And there is always the medical component is more expensive, can be effective, but I think you need to, if you do the medical component, you need to do both. Don't just do one and assume that that's going to fix it for you. Do the disinfecting and do the eating as well, and you'll get the best out of both. So thank you, everybody. Love you. Keep coming back.